right, our second unit of the discussion of print media will cover the evolution of print journalism. And so we will, of course, talk a little bit about journalism in its electronic and digital forms as a multimedia form of content. But this is going to be our most in-depth discussion of journalism in the course, because for much of its history, journalism, and still today is, actually journalism is primarily a printed product, whether, displayed words on a computer screen or what we're talking about for most of the time, which is actually printed out on a piece of paper in the form of a newspaper. What are we going to talk about journalism in terms of? Number one, which is the subject of this first video, is why is it important? Why do we care that there's something called the news? And why do we care what it looks like? Number two, that gives way to a discussion rather naturally of how is it put together? If you are a journalist for a living, what does that mean you do? And what are some of the different kinds of conventions and what have been the different conventions over time in how the news has been put together, essentially. And then finally, to the business side of things a little bit. In America, we have a largely for-profit media system where these are businesses that have to stay solvent. And so we'll talk a little bit throughout this sort of historical evolution of this critical question of how this, what you call the business model, like how they stay a solvent company and make money, how that has evolved and how it perhaps maybe influences or at least is related in some way to the actual product, what the product looks like, and what stories get covered and so on. So, all right, this first bit is just why journalism? Why do we belabor this form of media so much? In a democratic society, journalism is essential for people to have some way to keep the people that represent them accountable. Theoretically, through voting and other kind of feedback to the government, we're supposed to have some say in the way things go in our society, in the way the rules are written, and who gets to do what. How all this collective money that we pay in taxes is spent, and so on, right? And so the news, first and foremost, in a democratic society, plays the role of telling us what's going on in the first place, what these people who we've elected or maybe have been appointed through other political procedures, what they're doing, so that we can decide, do we approve or not, essentially. A second major function is an explanatory function. The news or journalism mediates between the world of subject matter experts and industry and all this complicated stuff, like what's going on Wall Street, maybe, for instance, right, with the sort of financial sector, and citizens. So not all of us have to get really knowledgeable about stocks. Right, we don't have to become experts in the sort of general affairs of the world ourselves. We have the news to kind of translate a little bit for us, to give us, an intelligent layperson's version of, what's going on with stuff that's really very, abstract and complex with science or the economy or, things like that. And then finally, it gives us a sense of who's around us. There's a sort of particular niche, I guess, or segment of the news that reports on, sort of stories that you might call human interest, and, more generally involves, explaining what's going on with the people around us. Are they doing well? Are they doing poorly? Is a particular community having a particular kind of experience, and so on? So this is this phrase, how the other half lives, from a photographer, actually from the late 19th century, documenting tenements in the Lower East Side in New York City, but it serves as sort of a stand-in for this broader function of informing us how people live.